I don't care what anybody says. There's no hacks for working hard. You got to work hard. I'm not saying work 10 hours to 12 hours a day, but I'm saying when you're working, you got to really put in the effort. Step number 3 is similar to hard work, but it's like deliberate practice. In baseball, I was struggling with hitting curveballs. So I would be the first guy out on the field, and the pitching coach would throw me 1,000 curveballs, and I would just do that. I would just focus on curveballs until I got better. In keynote speaking, I really struggled with transitions. And so I just practiced over and over that one piece of the keynote until I got a little bit better at that. Then I would move on to something else. So step 3 is deliberate practice. It's super important.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of the Eternal Optimist podcast. I'm host Matt Rincon. And today we have a special treat. Today, our guest is none other. You got to check this out on YouTube, by the way. You've got to look on YouTube because Damon's background is on fire and he's incredibly good looking. He's got a great smile. And he's unembarrassable, by the way, because he's so cool. I've got a guest today. He's a former professional athlete. He has a top podcast, and he's incredibly easy to talk to. He's got some great stories for us today. I welcome to the show today, Mr. Damon Lembi. Damon, how are you, sir?
Well, Matt, it's an honor to be here, and I'm going to have to make sure my wife actually watches one of my podcasts since you told me that I was handsome. So thank you for that.
Yeah, true. Well, I'm not afraid to say you've got amazing hair. And one cool thing about Damon so far I've learned, not only does he have amazing hair, but he is like a couple years older than me. He's got kids younger than me. So he's staying alive. Just past 50, he's got young kids.
They keep you young.
Impacting? Yeah. I graduated college in 99, and one of my best friends who I've known for years, he had kids before I did. Mine are 9, 8, and 6. He had kids before I did, and they just had another child. At 47 years old, another child. So you know what that's like. So it's like you get your kids up to a certain age, and then you have another one all of a sudden, and they're going through it again. Any event. Looking forward to our discussion. Let's dive in. Damon, can you give us some context? Like, who is Damon Lembi?
So I'm Damon Lembi. I live out here in the San Francisco Bay Area. And for the first 22 years of my life, I was a baseball player. And that's all I wanted to do. I went all in to being a baseball player. When I was a sophomore in high school, I said to myself, if I'm going to play sports professionally in college, it's not going to be basketball. It's not going to be football. My ticket would be baseball. So I worked really hard at it. Turned out pretty well. I was a high school All-American my senior year. And I had the first really big decision in my life, Matt. I was drafted by the Atlanta Braves in the 1990 draft. So kind of giving myself a little age of myself here. And I also had a full ride to Pepperdine University. And my parents were really cool. They said, hey, look, this is your life. We'll support you in whatever direction you want to go in. And so I chose at that time, the route to go into college. And it was because I was 17, so maybe I was a little, I was a little young. But also my coach, Andy Lopez, who's a famous Hall of Fame college baseball coach, he had this great moonshot vision. Pepperdine, 2,500 person school, was going to win the College World Series, and which is unheard of when you go up against University of Texas and Florida and all these different schools. And he's like, you'll be a big part of the team. So I get to Pepperdine and dealt with imposter syndrome because I'm like, everybody's as good as I am. Long story short, I got hurt. I ended up bouncing around. I got another opportunity, got drafted again by the Yankees, got another opportunity to play at Arizona State. A lot of people told me not to. They're like, just go to a small school and move on with your life. I'm happy to dig into that. But I said, screw it. This is my last chance for baseball. I went there. I had a great career there, ready to move on to the next level and continue my professionally, hit a home run in the College World Series. Boom. My baseball career came to an end, didn't get drafted, 22 years old. What do I do now? So that's Damon up to 22 years old. Since then, I've been the CEO of a learning and development company called Learnit for 30 years, which is crazy to think about. And we've upskilled over 2 million people, and we help customers who turn to us if they want to onboard new managers or they want to create learning programs. And that's basically, in a nutshell, who I am. Like you said, I got a beautiful younger wife, 2 kids, a 7-year-old and a 3-year-old, who I think first and foremost, I want to be a great dad, just like my parents were to me. My dad was my idol. I lost him 10 years ago to cancer. And so, that's me in a nutshell.
Awesome. And first, starting to hear about your dad, excited to hear more of this amazing story. So if we could go back and unpack a couple things, I'd love to go back to your decision-making process. Damon Lembi at 17, deciding to go to Pepperdine as opposed to, going to the Braves. How did you think about that? Who did you counsel with? Just talk about that process of that decision back when you were 17, Damon.
So I remember like it was yesterday, sitting in the kitchen, or in the kitchen with my two parents and Bill Serena, this famous 80-year-old scout for the Atlanta Braves, with this paper contract for me, going through the terms. It was good money for back then, plus college, and he went through everything. We went to the other room with my parents and we talked it through. And I was kind of at a loss. I didn't know what to say or what to do. And obviously, I didn't have to make a decision right on the spot. But I came back and I just told him, right now I'm not ready to move in and sign and go in Pulaski, West Virginia, and play. And so it went on for a couple months. I talked to mostly my parents and some of my friends, and but I think at the end of the day, I was just a young 17-year-old, and I wasn't sure I wanted to be that far away from home. And also, Andy Lopez was incredibly, influential on the decision just by pumping up Pepperdine so much. It was almost like, well, how could I possibly turn that opportunity?
Understood. Well, cool. It's cool you can crystal clear remember that from back in the day. So that's amazing. So if you fast forward, you're now at Pepperdine, and you say that everyone's good now. So you were the best, and you were drafted. And you get there, and now some people can compete with you. What was that like for you? Because you mentioned the word imposter syndrome at some point when around this age. So can you talk a little bit about what that experience was like, competing for the first time with like people that were just as good as you, and imposter syndrome? What that was like?
Even throughout high school, I got to play all over the world. And so I played with great players on a regular basis, right? But when I got to Pepperdine, everybody on the team was the best of the best from their areas. And I just didn't know if I belonged. And Matt, I'd go out to the field and I was just paralyzed. I was afraid to make mistakes. I was afraid to be myself and speak up. And so literally what happened was about 45 days into fall practice, we had our player coach meeting, kind of like a performance review. I come into Andy Lopez's office. I go to sit down. And before I can even say hello, he says, Damon, when we recruited you at Pepperdine, it was because we believed you had the talent to be a middle of the lineup hitter, a great third baseman, and a huge asset for us to get to our goal of winning the College World Series. And he's like, son, I just don't think you have the talent to play D1 baseball. I just don't think you're good enough. And he sat back and he crossed his arms. And so imagine what I was thinking, right? I was like, how do I get out? How do I get out of here? I just want to go take a bus home or whatever. This is like the world come crashing down on me. And before I almost started crying. Before I had a chance to say anything, he leans forward, points at me, and says, "That's not what we think of you. That's what you think about yourself. And that's what the problem is." He's like, "You've got a great swing. The hitting coach thinks you're fabulous. You have all the talent in the world, but you're stuck in your head. And there's only so much we can do for you. And if you don't get out of your own head and learn to get after it like we know you can, you're going to fail. You're going to fail." And so at this point, we've done whatever we can. And so that was like, again, that's something else I'll never forget. Was he was basically just saying, you don't see what we see. You're underestimating yourself, and you're paralyzing yourself. You got to get out of this. And I'd like to tell you that I immediately left his office, turned things around, but I didn't. I got hurt, and I just decided to leave Pepperdine. Like I said, I bounced around. And when it came back to that opportunity at Arizona State, about 2 years later, after junior college, everybody was saying, don't go to Arizona State. They're going to have 17 guys trying out there. And I said to myself, talking about decision-making, I just said to myself, look, this is my last chance. My entire life, I wanted to be a baseball player. I'm not going to look back 30 years from now and think I passed up this opportunity. So I accepted the offer to Arizona State. And then I worked my butt off. And during that time, I didn't really even realize it, but I built myself a 4-step framework to overcome imposter syndrome that I used throughout my entire life. And I could share that framework, or I can continue on with the story.
Well, you just said like the really sexy words to me. You have a framework to use to overcome adversity. I love that. So I'd love to Your choice. If you want to continue the story, please do. But I definitely making a note. I want to hear the framework for sure.
Yeah, so I'll go on with the story. So I win the starting first base position. I have a great year. I
Nice.
forgot to mention the year I left Pepperdine, they won the College World Series. So, for your listener base and for all of us, it just shows you though, you can set moonshot goals and you can make it happen, right? And I'm actually having lunch with Andy Lopez in Tucson next week. We still keep in touch after all these years, and all the things that I learned from him. And he was Matt, the way you coached back then versus how you coach now is a little different. I mean, he was tough. These guys were tough, but it just shows you could hit and get moonshot goals. So, but anyways, I'm at Arizona State. I hit a home run in the College World Series in Omaha, Nebraska. The next day is the Major League Draft, and this is before the internet. And so we all sat around our room waiting for our phone call. My best friend and roommate Jacob Cruz got his call. San Francisco Giants first round pick. Throughout the day, 12 more people got drafted. My call never came. For whatever reason, right? I mean, for whatever reason, maybe I hit my maximum potential. Who knows? And so here I am. I got to go out play the rest of the College World Series, but it just crushed my identity because all I ever was a baseball player. I've never had a job. And so my baseball career came to an end after that. And I wasn't sure my skill set was even transferable. I was all wrapped up in the identity of a baseball player. And I didn't realize it at the time. But the athletic education that I got really what's impacted me the most, that I've been able to lead me to a successful career post baseball.
Awesome. And I want to dive into that career because I'm really interested we're about the same age and you've been a CEO for 30 years running Learnit. So I'm super curious about your Learnit story. Can you go back to your framework, your 4-part framework for
Absolutely.
how you overcame imposter syndrome? Mm-hmm. Yeah, please.
And I think this works both in sports, and I've used it professionally, both at Learnit or even when I first got into keynote speaking. So step number one for imposter syndrome is labeling your fear. What are you afraid of? And for baseball, what was I afraid of? Did I go out? I fail. I don't make the team. Keynote speaking, hey, I get up on stage. I don't do a good job, whatever, right? I look at it, label your fear. At the end of the day, if you could overcome that, who cares, right? So you understand what you're afraid of. So once you understand what you're afraid of and it's something you can overcome, move on to step number 2. I don't care what anybody says. There's no hacks for working hard. You got to work hard. I'm not saying work 10 hours to 12 hours a day, but I'm saying when you're working, you got to really put in the effort. Step number 3 is similar to hard work, but it's like deliberate practice. In baseball, I was struggling with hitting curveballs. So I would be the first guy out on the field, and the pitching coach would throw me 1,000 curveballs, and I would just do that. I would just focus on curveballs until I got better. In keynote speaking, I really struggled with transitions. And so I just practice over and over that one piece of the keynote until I got a little bit better at that. Then I would move on to something else. So step 3 is deliberate practice. It's super important. And then finally, step 4 is learn and let go. So whether you're stepping into the batter's box, you're stepping up on stage, or you're managing a team for the first time, you got to get out of your head. You got to stop thinking about technique and everything. And I really just focus on, okay, I've put in the work, I've put in the effort. Whatever happens, happens. I might knock the ball out of the park. I might crush it on stage. I might fall flat on my face and fail or strike out. But at the end of the day, each outcome is a learning opportunity. You can learn something from that. And you can get a little bit better next time. And I want to add to that, to everybody out there, the fact that you're able to get out of your comfort zone and you're trying something, give yourself a pat on the back for that. I think there's so many people who pass up opportunities either because they don't feel like they belong or they're not good enough. And the fact that I've always said, look, I'm going to learn and let go. I'm going to learn something from this, but I'm also going to give myself a little silent pat on the back and like, hey, Damon, you know what? You tried, and that's it.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I love the framework. I want to test it. I want to see. Can you take us back to a time in your speaking career where things didn't go the way you wanted? How did you handle that? Can you tell us the story?
Yeah. Let me think about it. Well, I could tell you one about, I'm trying to think about my speaking career. Oh, okay. I would say the first time I ever did a podcast. Okay. It was the very first time I was on this show called the Talent Development Hot Tank, and I said yes. And for my industry, it's one of the biggest ones because it's all the L&D leaders in everything. And so I accept the invitation. It's right after my book, The Learn It All Leader, came out, and I was nervous. I was totally nervous, and I completely bombed it. I completely bombed it. You could. It's on YouTube, I think. Gosh. And you could just see I looked scared, and I was fumbling what I had to say. I was repeating myself and everything. And so how I handled it, Matt, was, well, for one, I didn't give up. I'm fortunate enough at Learnit, we do presentation training and stuff like that. So I turned to the people on my team and said, look, I know this is awful, but I really want to get better at this. So give me some advice. And so they gave me some advice. And you know what I did? I jumped on every single podcast that would take me, and I would do keynotes or talks at the Chamber of Commerce or anywhere. I just kept doing as many as possible to just try to get a little bit better time after time, and realize that, hey, you know what? It's believing. I was optimistic to the point that, like, I'm going to get better with this, and it's not going to happen overnight. And so that's an example of just bombing and moving forward. And the funny thing is, I'm friends now with the guy who runs that podcast, and we actually do work together. And whenever I introduce him to somebody, I'm like, this first guy had me on his podcast, and we're still friends. I was terrible.
I love your resilience. I loved how you took it and you bombed it and you knew it and you just kept going. And then here's the key thing. Like, this is how it kind of shifts into my world of coaching, is that you were able to, A, know you didn't do good. You're aware you didn't do good. B, then you went seeking feedback so you can improve. I love that. I just love the mindset. To me, that's strong leadership, for one. It just shows incredible learning mentality. So I want to applaud you for that, and thank you for sharing the story. Because I'm hoping that the leaders, or the listeners who are leaders, our leaders and listeners out there can hear that there is a chance for you to grow and improve if you own and face your fear, the challenge, and work to improve on it. And I love the way you just did that. So thank you for that story.
And one thing that you brought up that I think is really important to close the loop on that is the ability to receive feedback. There's always a lot of talk about giving feedback, but I think in any aspect of your life, as a parent, as a coach, as a business leader, if you're able to receive feedback, ask for feedback and receive feedback, I just think that's fuel for growth. It's gold. It's tough to do 100%. Sometimes, but that's just something that I've worked on getting better at over the years.
Applaud you for that. And how many CEOs I coach that I come to the organization and I hear from the teammates that they don't really receive feedback that well. And they say they want it, but the first time that you give it to them, they shut you down, and I see that consistently. So to hear you kind of bring that up, I'm hoping our listeners out there are kind of putting a little asterisk in their mind. Many of you who are owners or are leaders who have a big team that reports to you, or a small team, or you have a family and you're getting feedback from your significant other or even from your children. The idea of being open and receptive that someone else can see, like, because if you're in the bottle and you can't see your own stuff because you're in the bottle all the time, if you're not open to feedback, then you're never getting out of the bottle. So I love that you have that and you went there naturally. So great work. Let's keep moving. Let's go from transitioning from identity at 22. You just hit the home run. You're fired up. You don't get the draft call, and you're realizing my aspiring baseball career, all I've ever wanted, it's not going to happen. So take us forward from there into the next chapter for Damon.
So I was really fortunate, come from a family that was a super successful real estate family in San Francisco. And we had a bunch of different businesses. And so I had opportunities. Now, I never had a real job. And I was again, kind of intimidated to go into the workforce. And my dad was starting this company called Learnit, which is a computer training school that he was trying to solve his own problem, trying to digitize our portfolio, took a class somewhere, hated it. And so I started there as a receptionist. So I went from hitting a home run in the College World Series to starting as a receptionist. I did that for two reasons. Number one, I didn't want to be like, Daddy put me at the top of the organization in a senior leadership position and, with a silver spoon in his mouth. I wanted to show people that I could roll up my sleeves and contribute. And number two, like I said, I wasn't even sure what I was capable of doing. So I swallowed my pride and I started as a receptionist. And it was funny, in the first 6 months, it was just kind of a shock to me to see the lack of competitiveness a lot of times that in the business world. I was, we'd lose deals or things wouldn't go well, and people were okay with that. I wasn't used to that being very competitive in sports, and I was really grateful
Yeah.
for everything my family did in the what I had growing up. And I said to myself, I'm going to find something to be great at. I want to get out of just living in my dad and grandfather's shadows, and I want to contribute. And so that's where my journey into learning really came. I mean, at Arizona State, I mean, I wasn't a big student. I wasn't, much into school, but here I am. The last 30 years, I've been all about learning and development, learning and growth, and so I just dove in. I learned how to use computers. I taught classes. I did IT work. I did sales. And 5 years into it, when the CEO isn't working out, I threw my hat in the ring to become CEO. My dad's like, "All right, kid, we'll give you the opportunity," and so yeah, I kind of took over there, and then and I've been leading Learnit ever since. I mean, there's been ups and downs, great learning lessons, great teams. We're coming up on our 30-year anniversary, and I'm happy to go in whatever direction or questions you have about it.
Yeah, I'm excited about this because if I'm doing my math right, you're 27, 28. You're stepping into your first CEO role. You started at the bottom, so you got to learn and see everything that goes on down there first. So how did you start as a CEO at that? Let's just say you were 28-ish?
Yeah, probably.
When you started as CEO, and there's not really necessarily a training program for CEO at 28, other than you've got to be in the business and just learn everything. So
Yeah.
I'm curious, what was the first intersection as a CEO that was really challenging?
Well, take it back to this is the .com days in San Francisco. So things were just going nuts. Everything was, all my buddies were paper millionaires. I mean, I thought, I'm a freaking genius. I'm a genius. All you have to do is have a fax paper in the fax machine, and you're just crushing it. And so I got a little, over my skis. I got a little confident, and I wanted to really expand and open up other locations. And my dad never worked at Learnit, but he loved Learnit, right? But he said, bigger isn't always better. You actually have a brick and mortar business that's profitable. Be smart. But I pushed them. We overexpanded, and then the .com bust happened about 2001, 2002. And I'll be honest, if it wasn't for my family support, Matt, we would have gone out of business. No doubt about it. And but what my dad likes to say, what he liked to say back then is, you had the most expensive real world MBA that is possibly imaginable.
Yeah.
But I believe in you, kid. You show up every day. You just keep getting after it. I want you to learn these lessons. When you have to borrow money, you got to call up your grandfather and ask for the 20 grand, which that never went well, but I did it, And so that was like the first biggest learning lesson at that point. Was I was kind of a know-it-all, right? I thought I had all the answers, and that's not the case. You got to get outside perspectives, listen to other people, let them challenge your assumptions, let them challenge your choices. And I didn't do that. But what I did do is I learned what we did wrong. And when that happened again in 2009 with the Great Recession, I was proactive. I didn't have our family business, fell apart, our real estate business. So I knew I wouldn't be able to fall back on my family's financing. So I got together with both my leadership team at Learnit, plus my outside mentors, and my dad was alive back then, and really thought through what we could learn from the last, in the .com bust. And we did things totally differently. We ripped off the Band-Aid, made the cuts we needed to make, pivoted, and survived and thrived, made it through all that. So that was one of the biggest failures I ever had, and one of the best learning lessons that helped pay back a little bit of that super expensive MBA that my dad would joke about all the time.
I think there's a lot of wisdom to what you just shared, and we can talk about it now in retrospect and joke about the idea that was the most expensive MBA ever. And
it was.
Yeah, I'd say most CEOs at some point have learned some, and I don't think a lot of them would be as gracious as to call it an expensive MBA lesson. They're just pissed and they're still down about it. I love the way you framed it. It was an expensive lesson. Nonetheless, it was a lesson. It was a learning lesson that you learned from tremendously. And you applied that learning when you sat down and worked it out with your leadership team in 2009. So if there's a message that I'm feeling right now, and again, this is coming back to coaching. I was running an event today talking about, what are the hardest things that have happened to you in your business, or happened, I guess, for you now, that have empowered you to learn and grow to even bigger than you could have been had you not gone through it. And you did that. So Love to hear that. I love to hear the humility in which you're speaking of all these things too. I'm not hearing an entitlement. I'm hearing learning. I'm hearing curiosity. Just out of curiosity, what are your core values, Damon?
I would say my core values, one, you said the word entitlement. I never wanted to be that way, right? I was very fortunate from what I came from.
Yeah.
So I would say if I had my personal core values would be around humility, curiosity, integrity, courage, and, not ever having a victim mentality, owning up to it. So, and leading by example. I mean, that's those, I would say those are my core values.
Yeah, I love every one of those. We're going to be friends. I love this. Humility, curiosity, integrity, courage, owning myself and all my stuff. I love everything you just shared. Thank you. Can we be best friends? That was
Let's
awesome.
do it.
Dude, I love it. That was awesome. Well, I feel like a kid in a candy store because our core values are totally similar, and you've learned some great lessons. You've been doing this for so long. So talk to me about, are there any other inflection points, friction points that come to mind? Like this was a hard time or a challenging time. I learned a big lesson.
Professionally or personally or?
Well, let's go personal this time. Yeah, personal this time.
Obviously the first one was the baseball, right? The identity with baseball. And what I was sharing with you off camera is, one of the things that made me a great baseball player was I had great, I'd get a lot of walks because I had great eyesight, right? I could always stay away from bad pitches and I can, just only swing at good pitches. So when I was about 9 years ago, I was playing basketball. And I just was misjudging the rebound. I'd played tennis and I had blind spots when I was hitting the ball. Long story short, I go to an optometrist. She does a test on me. She looks at me and she's got this like awful look on her face. And she said, "You have yellow drusen in your eyes." And I'm like, I don't even know. I don't know what that means. You need to go see a retina specialist. So I go see a retina specialist, and they didn't know exactly what it was at the time. And my eyesight was pretty good, but they said you have a progressive retina degeneration, disease. It's kind of like macular degeneration, but different, where it's going to take away most of your central vision, if not all of it, right? And so that was a very difficult pill to swallow at 42, 43, or 44, whatever it was.
Yeah.
Similar to, and it's over the years, it's kind of progressed to the point where I can't drive anymore. And, one thing that makes me sad, Matt, is I can't play catch with my kid, my kids, right? Because it's just, you just can't, right? So that's been one of the biggest challenges that I've had to go through. But it's one of those things where I think everybody has something. I wake up in the morning, I'm never like, hey, this isn't fair. I actually look at it the opposite. I look at it like, why not me? Right? I mean, why, what makes me any different than anybody else? And I think it's okay to grieve, but I also think that like, hey, I'm really grateful for what I have. And,
yes.
and I'm going to work within the constraints of whatever this stupid disease is going to do, but I'm going to make the best out of it. Right? I'm going to make the absolute best out of it. And I've done that. I joined the Foundation of Fighting Blindness community. And I'm not one of those guys who are, need to be in those kind of groups, but I joined it and it's been super helpful, for me for learning. And I feel like, your listeners out there, like if you have, whether it's work or whether it's some kind of major adversity, you don't have to go through this on your own, reach out and connect to people and talk it through. So that's been a big help for me. And I guess the other way I look to deal with it is really, I lead Learnit as an organization. I got close to 100 employees, and I want to set the example of, hey, this is something I got going on. I'm sure you all do. I'll be vulnerable enough, but vulnerable with confidence. Not like, oh, feel sorry for Damon. And then I think what's really most important to me is that my kids and my wife and everybody, that I model the behavior of having the courage to work through this, work within my constraints, and whatever happens. And I just know I'm going to make the best of it. And I have faith that whatever happens, I'll be fine. So, yeah.
I love everything you just shared and much respect. I literally just had, this is so cool. I had someone on the show last month who was the guy. You ever seen that movie, The Hurt Locker?
Yeah, of course. Jeremy Renner?
Came out. Yeah. I didn't have him on. I had the guy that in real life was a bomb disposal unit technician in Afghanistan. And he went over there and he diffused thousands of these bombs. And one day the bomb went off right in his face, blew a hole in his face. And somehow his unit saw it. They picked him up. They brought him back and he survived. And he's got a show right now. His name's Aaron Hale. And I had him on the show. It was awesome. And he invited me to be in his show. And I want to introduce you to him because it was an amazing
introduce
show.
me
And
to
I'm
him.
hearing you right now. To hear your optimism, your energy, you don't back down, you're humble about it, just to hear your keep moving forward attitude, it's an inspiration to all of us. And I believe deeply, that this is more of what people need. They need to see people that are having challenges who are sharing, this is my experience of the challenge. So I applaud you for having the courage to share it. Yeah.
Like, what choice do I have? Am I going to give up? You know what I mean? Are you, when you had your spine injury, are you just going to give up? No, I mean, some people can, and they can blame it, or it's like, I'm not going to give up. You know what I mean? There's too much of life left to live. And, and the other thing it taught me is like, don't take things for granted. Like, having your eyesight and then all of a sudden not having it or having it change, it's like, be really grateful and be present. Just because things can change, so enjoy your time and be present with your kids or your family or whatever. So I just looked at it like, I don't have a choice, and I'm not going to let this thing stop me.
Amen, brother. Thank you for that. I'm sure all of us will feast on that when we listen to this. So team, listen up carefully. There's been some real great nuggets today. I'd love to go. Let's first go. Where can we learn with you? Where can we find out more about you and connect with you? I'm super curious to get that out there. So where do we go, Damon?
Yeah, so I'm pretty active on LinkedIn, Damon Lembi on LinkedIn. I've got a great podcast. Well, I think it's a great podcast, the Learn It All podcast, and I can't wait to get you on, Matt. I want to give a shout out to Aaron Bradbury for introducing us. Also I would, and then learnit.com.
Learnit.com. And so can you go a little bit more into your podcast? I'm super curious about it. So the Learn It All podcast, what is it about? And give us a little bit of background, please.
I just started the podcast after I've been on a bunch of shows. People are like, you should have your own podcast, because I'm so into learning, from people. And so I like to bring on high performers of all different types of industries and backgrounds and have a conversation with them to learn what makes them tick, either from a mindset perspective or share some lessons that's made them super successful as a leader, or share challenges that they've had, kind of like we talked about today, and how they've overcome that. So, that's literally what it is. And I'm sure same with you, it's like, it's incredible the type of people you can connect with, either whether it's on LinkedIn or wherever, and get an hour of time with, and it's like a free consulting session with some of the most successful people out there these days. And I just have I have a lot of fun with it. Feel like I get to learn from every opportunity. And for all those people out there who are considering either being on a podcast as a guest or being a host, it's an incredible networking opportunity. So get out of your comfort zone, do it, you make more friends. And I think it's also really important for personal branding. I think that we all have stories to share. You might be thinking to yourself, I don't have a story, but I think we all have stories, and it's a great way to give back.
And for a second there, I thought, is he actually talking to me, saying I don't think I have a story? Because you can't shut me up sometimes. But definitely, I'm with you. It's a great networking opportunity. Anyone out there who's on the fence about having a podcast, why not? Because I got to meet Damon today. I got to meet my book publisher 3 years ago. I got to meet some of my best friends in the world, literally some of my best friends. It's been incredibly helpful for our business because I've had a number of high dollar clients that have served in the podcast. So love the podcast. I'm a big proponent of it.
I just, right before this call with you, I just finished up a call with a guy who was a guest and turned into a big partner / client. So it's incredible. It can be incredibly helpful for your business.
Absolutely. Well, Damon, where is it here in the deep waters that we are swimming in? Where is it that I've not asked, that I've not explored? Is there any other story that comes up that you might like to share with us today before we move to wrap up?
Well, I would just say, kind of like my little slogan, I guess, is great leaders aren't born or made. They're always in the making. And what I mean by that is that there's always more to learn, and you always can learn something from everybody and continue to get better. Now, even if you think you're at the top of your game, there's somebody else who's probably better than you are at something. And if you're curious enough, and you got to get yourself out there and continue to learn and grow, because at the rate of pace of change with what's going on now with the world and everything, you have to be continuously learning. And great leaders aren't born or made. They're always in the making. If I can do this, and be successful and continue to want to be more successful, you can do it as well. That's what I'm referring to your listeners.
Awesome. Well, let's dive into the lightning round here. We know where to find you. We're going to find you on LinkedIn. We're going to find it on the Learn It All podcast, and you're the CEO of Learnit, so we know where to find you. I'm curious. I want to ask you about books. I'm thinking if your eyesight is a challenge, I don't know if you're reading as much. I see a bunch of books on your shelf.
Yeah.
But when it comes to books, are there 1 to 3 books that you have read or listened to that you recommend to the audience that's had an impact on you?
Yeah, well, so again, I adapted. I read off a Kindle now with a bright contrast. So all the books behind me I can't read, but whatever, it's fine. I read the Kindle version of them. I just brought these books here because my wife said that she needed more room for the kids at home, right? So that's why you see all these books. So I would say to answer your question, one of my favorite books is called The Generalist by David Epstein, and I think that that's important. I might have got that name wrong, but put the note in show links. It's a fabulous book because, Matt, a lot of people come to me and they're like, I want my kid to be a great baseball player like you. So he plays baseball 24/7. And I'm like, that's the exact opposite you want to do. What I think you should do, whether it's sports or music or anything, explore and try different things. Play all kinds of sports, do gymnastics, do karate. So that's why I love that book, because he contrasts people who do just hyper focus on one thing versus individuals who were more well-rounded. So I think that that's a really, really great book. One of my favorite books is Losing My Virginity by Sir Richard Branson. I really think he's fabulous. There's a lot of great learning stories in his books, both professionally and in the chances and everything that he's taken. So those are two of my favorite books. And then in general, I would say read biography. There's so many great learning lessons that they're all bottled up for like $15 in biographies. And I'm a huge Winston Churchill fan, and so I've read probably a dozen books on him. So I think it's the Lion or something like that. But yeah, I'm still a big book reader, and even with 2 little kids, I just carve out 20 minutes, 25 minutes every morning to read. Is what I do.
Amen. I love it. And for our listeners, again, Damon, highly successful CEO. He's always learning, and he just says it's that daily. And I'll go back to your 4-step process. There's no hack for working hard, and you got to have deliberate practice. And what I just heard, the way I translated it, is he's reading every day. And he's 52, and he's been reading every day for a long time. Every day, a dose of 25 minutes of reading builds. It builds something. We don't know exactly what it builds, but it builds something. Maybe it's a skill, maybe it's a mindset, maybe it's a habit, maybe you're modeling for your kids so they have the learning mindset. But I love that you do that every day. I love to do the same thing. And since we're on biographies, you mentioned Winston Churchill. When I did my event today, I wrote down 16 quotes on kind of the easel, on the pages, and I stuck them all over the room. And I had 4 of them from Nelson Mandela. So my favorite biography is it's A Long Walk to Freedom. I read it in 92 in high school, and still love that book. That's my biography.
Hey, give me one more biography. Do you have one more that you love?
Off the top of my head, I love Elon Musk's newer book. It was a hard, deep read, and it makes you love him and then not like him. But I love that. Again, back to kind of what you were talking about with your 4-step process, in deliberate practice, he is deliberate on the one thing that's most important to him. And I can appreciate, someone like a Gary Keller or Jay Papasan one thing type mentality, just be the very best at it. So I like that. I like the must. But since you're asking, and I love talking about books, who else? I'd say one more book. Kind of a biography, but it's kind of just a bunch of business lessons. I love Keith Cunningham's The Road Less Stupid. That book has been very influential in my business career. In fact, a lot of my coaching lessons come from that. And his, I think it's called the Badass MBA or whatever his mastermind group is. I've had a bunch of clients that have been to that, and they've all raved for it. So I love Keith Cunningham's The Road Less Stupid as well. So
I love books.
Yeah, those are a couple books.
I love books. Yeah. And I want to say for your listeners too, it's okay to mix in fiction books as well. Because fiction it really helps with your creativity and problem solving, so it's like you don't have to be like, I want to be a business person and I got to read 100 business books all the time. So that's kind of like one of my, to go to sleep, I'll read like a Michael Connelly novel or something like that. So it's just, I just
Yeah.
think it's a much better use of your time than just, zoning out on Netflix all the time. So not that you can't
Yeah.
do that, but I think reading, I think I just really, really enjoy it.
I love it. And we're on a roll. Let's continue. One more thought. One more thought.
Wait.
I got here.
What is that? Oh, Gates
Cool.
on Fire. That guy's the
The
best.
Gates of Fire by Pressfield. I love Pressfield books. This is the one about 300, the Battle of Thermopylae, and it's fantastic and very gruesome and detailed and gory and awesome. This is a good one for you war people who want to listen to or read or listen to a good book. This is a good historical theatrical summary of the 300 battle.
I got to read that. I love his books. Steve Pressfield, War of Art or War of whatever it's called. His books are freaking phenomenal. One last book I just want to recommend is I just finished up with it, and you got to listen to this one. But Al Pacino's Sonny Boy, absolute the best. His story and his humility and just Al Pacino's voice. If you ever are, commuting or you're going for a walk or whatever, and you have any interest in Al Pacino, absolutely. That's, I can't believe I didn't think about that earlier. That's a book I've recommended to like 50 people in the last 2 weeks.
And we'll continue the string. Anthony Bourdain, Kitchen Confidential, is an excellent listen for anyone who's in the chef world and wants to know about the underbelly of what really goes on in low end, high end, in the restaurant industry. You want to understand the culture of the worker and the chef. It is unbridled. It's from 2009. It's crazy. It's awesome. That's worth a listen to.
I got one less left. It's nice. It's called Red Notice. If you want to know anything about Putin,
oh my God.
If you want to know anything about Putin, what's going on in Russia, that is like the best real life criminal book I've ever. It's unbelievable. Everybody I've ever recommended Red Notice to, and don't get mixed up with the rock show on TV. Red Notice, the guy who wrote that, his name escapes me right now. That guy's got the biggest guts I've ever. It's ridiculous. But go get Red Notice.
I never heard of that, but a client, my longest standing client, recommended that to me a couple of years ago, and I got it, and I couldn't put it down.
Yeah.
It's like the person in America who started the first, I want to say like financial advisory or stock exchange type firm in Russia, and he was super successful until like overnight the government took over, and it was like threatening to his life, and like it was crazy story.
It's insane.
Crazy story. It's awesome.
Yeah. That guy, I don't know. That guy, if you have Putin talking about you on national TV, you know what I mean? It's like he's still alive, but it's crazy.
I want to say it was Bill Brower or Bill Browder or something like that.
Bill Browder. Yeah.
Yeah. Crazy story. Okay. Keep moving. We got 2 more questions to go. We're going to get through them. The second question is about music. Is there a certain genre, artist, song just that lights you up that you always have on your Spotify?
So my thing is, I don't have any interest in ever playing an instrument, but I'm a huge music fan. Huge music fan. My all-time favorite band is Guns N' Roses. I actually, chapter 5 of my book is around decision making, and it's a story about how I threw a private party for Axl Rose in 2006. So Guns N' Roses is my favorite. On my set list I have right now, for some reason, it's the Drive-By Truckers, Counting Crows. But I'm mostly a rock guy. I love Aerosmith, Metallica, Motley Crue, but I'm also a huge Billy Joel and Elton John fan. Pretty across the board stuff. But what about you?
Well, I went to a Billy Elton concert at Clemson University because I went to Wofford back in the day. So I remember that. It was pretty cool. If I had my choice to go to a concert, it'd just be a jam band. I just want to go to a jam band, just sit there and listen to some cool tunes with no agenda. So kind of unscripted. I don't do the whole jazz, like improvisational. That's too slow for me. But a jam band I really enjoy. But you say Counting Crows. I love that. My favorite artist is, he goes by Jay Hobbs. His real name's Jeremy Reisig. He's awesome. But Jay Hobbs is the artist. And he wrote a song called Abracadabra. So that's like one of my, like, kind of shift your mental wherever you are. And I listen to it every morning in the car with the kids on the way to school. It's all about your attitude and your mindset to start the day. So I love that one. I think that's going to be it. I will say this, since we're on personal stories and songs, Meatloaf.
I love Meatloaf.
I'd do anything for love, but I wouldn't do that. I love that song, and I wanted to hire him to come play at my 50th which is in 2 more years, and have a
Well,
prom. I never went to the prom, Damon.
Yeah.
I went to 3 high schools and 3 different states. I never went to a prom. And then when he died, like last year or the year before, I was like, oh man, I can't hire Meatloaf. But I love Meatloaf, not the food, the singer songs.
Yeah.
So
I mean, we could just cut this up and use it for my podcast. Who are you gonna have for your 50th?
See, I planned on being here and living in Charlotte and being up at one of the country clubs around here and doing it in Asheville at the Grove Park Inn, quite possibly, which is a nice place. But we're moving to St. Simons, Georgia in 63 days. So when we move to St. Simons, we might just use the new club down there. We might get some offsite property. I don't know, but we're going to have it. We're going to have a band. I'm going to invite my friends from all over the world. It's going to be fantastic. It's in 2 years, Masters weekend in April of 2027, and you're coming. So it's going to be awesome.
Hey, for my 40th, this is to tell you how life's changed. For my 40th, my brother, who's my best friend, and my mom, they rented out a place called Bimbo's in San Francisco. And we got a super group of guys from Guns N' Roses, Billy Idol, Sebastian Bach and Fred Durst from Limp Bizkit was the singer. And they played my 40th birthday. It was like 700 people. It was absolutely insane. Fast forward 10 years, I spent my 50th, my daughter's day before me, her birthday's the day before me, my 50th, Disneyland, wearing family matching outfits for 4 days in a row. My wife's taking these pictures of me with Mickey Mouse and all this stuff. And my buddies are just like, what happened to you? You went from throwing the most epic party in San Francisco to Disneyland. But hey, you know what? That's just how life changes. But you got to have somebody great for your 50th.
You're right. Life changes. I mean, New Year's Eve used to be the best day of the year. Party all night, not sleep, everything. And now I haven't actually made it to midnight in years.
No interest.
That's good. Well, let's put a bow on this and wrap it up. Last question goes to you, Damon. The question is this: you're on the Eternal Optimist podcast. Mm-hmm. What might Eternal Optimist mean to you, Damon?
I've kind of already answered that. It's like whether it's with my eyesight or with business, Eternal Optimist to me means that you believe that one way or the other, you're going to make things work out and things are going to happen for the best. You got to have the faith and belief that you're going to be able to push through. We're all still here. So we've survived our toughest days. And so that's what it means to me to be an eternal optimist, is always to have the faith and the courage and the strength to keep going.